Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Theory of Life podcast. We have Stephen Ramsey on. So, unfortunately, a few months ago, me, him, and our friend John did a podcast that got corrupted. So, that's sad, but he was on here before, but now he's back officially. So, Stephen, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, what you're interested in, the topic.
Yeah. Let's see. I went to school with Wade. He he studied music. I studied biblical studies, but I was interested more in the theological side of biblical studies and got into philosophy. Not very heavily, but just tried to take some classes on it and start thinking about it. And yeah, so philosophy is an interest of mine, but right now I'm I'm doing a lot of artistic things. I'm writing stories and poetry, trying to get those published, trying to figure out my style and voice and all that. And I've also started a literary magazine recently, things like that. And I'm getting ready to go to grad school and study English, but I'm still really invested in the conceptual side of art and aesthetics. And yeah, that's part of why I wanted to talk about value today, because
Yeah,
aesthetics.
like it's
Yeah.
kind of a combination between two things you're interested in, right? So it's like philosophy, and then there's this value kind of thing. It's really
Mhm.
relevant. So like me and Ben Beam, our friend, did a podcast yesterday on music, and this is a really good kind of part two. I also plugged you a lot in that podcast, so everyone's expecting you here today. So
Okay.
all three people that are watching, they're expecting you here today. So okay, also it's interesting because me, Steven, and Ben had like this philosophy group thing in our senior year of college. So we
Yeah.
we've all talked. We should have him on, just like the three of us, one more time. That would be super cool.
Yeah, we should. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, so with this topic, so value, like what? Explain the topic. Maybe define the term value. What do you want to talk about with value?
Yeah, what I want to do is just try to figure things out. I think that makes for the most interesting conversations when
Yep.
I'm listening to people talk, is
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear them figure something out.
Yep.
And by the end of that conversation, think that, I took something new away
Yeah.
from it, that they got not, maybe they didn't get to the middle of the issue, but they got closer. So
They
I
got
hope
closer.
that we can do with this. So I kind of want to just start like big picture, yeah, like try not to find like what is value, and then
Okay.
try to get as granular
I
as we
knew you were gonna say. I knew.
yeah,
Oh my goodness.
as specific as we can to hopefully clarify something. Some,
Yeah.
I don't know what that'll be right now, but
We'll
something,
figure it out.
hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So
no.
value,
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, value is, I think, it's a little hard to define, first of all, because it's such a basic concept. We know you could give synonyms for it, but it's hard to say that those synonyms are explanations, right? They might just be restatements. So like value is like goodness or like something good, right?
Yeah.
Like if a person has value, that means they have something that is good, which good things are worth something. Maybe like worth is a more relational thing, like more of a relative thing, where you have
Okay.
worth to something else in relation to something. But that seems like maybe a byproduct of value. So it's sort of hard to defend, but I mean define, but I think everyone knows what it means generally. Value is just this, it's a good thing. We all know what good means.
Yeah.
We know what that
Okay.
means.
Yeah.
So maybe there's the question of, does value have an existence of its own, or does it maybe only exist uh, in things? Is it a transcendent object thing that's out there somewhere, or does it like only instantiate in things? That's the only time that it exists, is when
Okay.
something has quality. What do you think? Like,
Okay, that is a really good question. So wait, side question. This is kind of
yeah,
random. I'm gonna edit this part out. Are you using a new Gmail account?
yeah,
Okay, good. Because like last time I did this with someone that used the old one, so I had to like reset. Anyway, I'll just edit
yeah.
that
No,
part
I'm
out.
using a different one. Yep.
Okay. Anyway, maybe I won't. I don't even want to edit. It's fine. The audience can
Okay.
deal with it. Anyway. Okay, so that's interesting. So this is kind of getting into Platonism and stuff,
Yeah.
and that's hairy and complicated. We might need John Bryden in here to clarify it. No, okay. So I I don't know if I have a view on that, right? So there's a sense in which valuable things participate in this kind of universal, that of value, right?
Hmm.
So we had a professor in our senior year named Dr. Garland, and we talked about this kind of Platonic thing. I remember I was talking to my friend Jesse Dunn about it a whole lot after class. Um, I do think universals are a thing outside of the instantiations themselves, right? So it does seem like, correct me if I'm just like completely going off track here, but so I have a blue water bottle here, and I also have a blue bike helmet. Now, there are different shades of blue, but they both have one thing in common, that of blueness, right? And it's not like blueness as such is the universal is only in these objects. It's kind of like a thing these two things participate in. Um, Maybe it's transcendent, but then again, the concept of participating in, I don't know exactly if that's clear or granulated enough. But yeah, that's kind of a general thought, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've always sort of found the participate terminology to be a little like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
like how do you further define what does it mean to participate? Like we all
Yeah,
know we can like visualize what that means. Like that's the way I think of it. Like this blue thing is like participating in blueness. And
yeah,
so it's like I see like a line connected to blueness, and blueness is like imparting this quality to the object, you know. But
yeah.
like what actually like that's like in your mind. But like what actually is going on when you say that an object participates in a universal? Because to me, one explanation might be that it resembles the universal. But then, why does it need to be universal? Why can't it just resemble all the other objects that are similar to it? Why do you need that external thing to tie them together?
Yeah, well, this is very interesting. Here's some way to think about it. A way to think about it is in terms of the quantity of things, right? So there's actually one thing that both things share, right? Now, again, there's vagueness in the word share, right? It's not two bluenesses. Like, there was one thing that are in two things, right? So perhaps you could draw out a contradiction if the blueness inside of the water bottle is only inside of the water bottle, and the blueness inside of the helmet is only inside the helmet, but they're the same blueness. You have two instantiations of one thing, which might draw out a contradiction or something. So maybe there's a sense in which there's a participation instead of the blueness itself is here. This is already getting so abstract, and I'm also kind
Yeah.
of thinking, because I don't think about this a whole lot, but it's still interesting to think about. So I may not even
Yeah.
make sense at all, but yeah. Anyway,
I think another way to think about the blueness, and maybe to avoid the contradiction, is that there's actually two different bluenesses. That there's nothing that's the same as anything else. Maybe you can say this like generally. There's
yeah,
nothing in reality that's the same as anything else. Nothing. So
I don't,
blue things are just similar to other blue things. And so our minds, because we like to put things together, we like to find commonalities. We say, okay, we're going to pick this one word where we say all these things that look similar to us, at least those of us who have, right, color perception, all those look similar,
yeah,
we'll stick a name on it. So it's not
yeah,
the same. They don't really have blue. They just have this color. They have this color that's similar, so we put it in the same category artificially impose the
yeah,
category.
yeah. I don't know. I really just I don't want this to immediately be a brick wall already, but
Yeah,
I do just have this intuition that like there is genuinely a thing that is in two things. There's one
yeah,
thing that is in two things, right? That of blueness in the situation, and I think when it ties back to value, like it's one of those things where like me and you have one thing in common, that of the value of being a person.
yeah.
Um, and maybe it's just a conflict of intuitions. But yeah, I don't.
No, but I do see that, and I think I'd probably agree with that. I think that, yeah, there
Yeah,
has.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
just, but no, I agree that there
We're just
has
trying
to
to
be.
yeah,
Yeah, we have to be sharing something. I don't know if that
yeah,
means you have to believe in universals or any of that, but I agree
yeah.
that like we have the same thing, like we have the same kind of value.
No, yeah, yeah. This is above my pay grade, but this is a very interesting conversation. No, that's something I want to think about. But maybe, unless you want to kind of delve into that a little bit more, I was thinking of a route we could take from this, if that's
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Um, yeah, okay. So there are some people out there, and maybe we don't have to stop here for too long of a time. There's some people who um, don't think that you can only define the word value in terms of synonyms, right? So they don't think that the word value means something that you really can't define, and the only way you can refer to it is in terms of things that mean the same thing, like value,
Yeah.
goodness, all of this stuff. They would define value in terms of preference, or in terms of what we mean by the word good, what we mean by the word bad is simply, to use Sam Harris's language, what we mean by the word bad is the worst possible suffering for everyone. Now, this is in the moral realm, but it's similar with the aesthetic realm and other kinds of normative realms, right? Some people just take that value something very different than this weird transcendent thing, and I want to know what you think about that.
Okay, wait, how does preference I don't think I understand. How does
Yeah,
preference um go what do you mean by like the greatest the great something leads to greatest possible
yeah,
good? What
yeah,
does that
yeah.
have
Yeah,
spec?
so Sam Harris is notorious for not being comprehensible sometimes. But so no, what I just mean is that, like, let's say I say that this hamburger is good, right?
Hmm.
What I mean by that is it tastes good, right? I
Right.
prefer this hamburger, right? I like this hamburger, right? And some
Yeah.
people say this notion of good can only mean that. It can only refer to things like that, and also it's synonyms, right? So things like value. I can't, for some reason, I can't think of a word similar to value and goodness at this point. But those you can only mean something that you just like, right? And you believe that others should like in some sense. Um, yeah. What? Yeah.
So no, I think um okay, wait. I was about to disagree with that. I was about to because I'm thinking that means it relativizes everything. But then I
Okay.
thought, well, on the Christian worldview, it might be that value is something like that. It's just that it's grounded by the preferences of
Yeah. Yeah.
an
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
individual, God.
Mm-hmm.
So there are kinds of value where it's literally just I like it and that's totally fine. Like I just this coffee is good. I like it.
Yeah.
But it could be that with other things, our likings can align with God's likings, and that results in objective, right? Because it's something corresponding to a standard, right? And so when we like
Yeah.
something God likes, then we're actually right about liking that, and that's not relative. Like
Yeah.
it's actually proper for us to like that thing. Like if God actually likes this coffee, then and I like it too, then it's right for me to like it. And if you don't like it, then you're wrong because you're
Yeah.
not with.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you think about that? Because like
So
I'm thinking if you don't have God, an authoritative preference, then
yeah.
it seems like it's all just relative, right?
Oh, you're crazy. Okay. No, that's so interesting. Yeah, so okay, to maybe push back against this idea of value just means something with respect to our preference. I don't know if it makes sense to even say that someone can have a correct preference, right? So this actually would push back against the theistic picture of morality too that you just laid out, right?
Yeah.
So there is kind of a sense in which it's a little bit incoherent to tell someone that they're wrong for liking vanilla ice cream rather than chocolate ice cream. Like it's not the right kind of thing to be wrong, right? It seems like
Yeah.
wrongness has really not much to do with desire. It's a very different kind of thing. And I just kind of know this up here. So I think in order to create a theistic picture that would make sense to me, right, maybe I could clarify exactly my problem with God merely desiring things and how that might be problematic. Like, just because God would want something, I don't see how. Now he's all powerful, he's all loving and all knowing and all this stuff, and that's really cool, and maybe he's perfect and all this stuff. But like, the mere fact that God would desire something, that tells me nothing about what I should do. Like, it just tells me what God likes, right? I just maybe I just don't care what He likes. You know what I mean? Like, so it seems to me that like there needs to be some kind of other definition of value that entails some kind of with morality, like obligation or something that would be just part of his character, independent. Like this character would entail his desire, but it's not that the morality is what it entails the desire, but it's not like the morality is entailed by the desire, if that makes sense. It's not like he
Okay.
desires first, and then the morality happens. It's like the morality is there inside of him, and then his desires follow. That's the way that I think of God. That seems like the most coherent picture of God.
Yeah. But okay, I see. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Where like I would say like yeah, God has this good character that doesn't change, and his desires flow from that.
Yeah.
I would say because his desires flow from that, they're also normative.
Yes. So only if they flow from a moral nature, though,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's not like the things are moral because he desires them. They're moral because they're moral, and he just happens to desire them because he's perfect. If that makes any sense.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know because
This
to me at
this
first
is
that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right to me.
oh man.
That
Okay.
that it seems like God controls what's valuable in the world because he has the value in him, the goodness, the morality in him. Then his desire is what causes things in the world to have value. It's not like they just have value independent uh of his desire. Because it's almost like his desire is what connects his goodness to the goodness in the world. If he desires something in the world, then that means that thing's not good. That means that thing's good. If he doesn't desire it, that means that thing's bad. So his desire is what like imparts value to things in the world. It's not like they already have the value and then he just recognizes it and it's like, ooh, I like that. Like it's his
What
desire that gives it the value.
so this is complicated. Maybe this is gonna get meta so fast.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe things are valuable because they're made by God, right? But that
Okay.
doesn't mean they're valuable because he desired to make them. In a sense, it is, but there is a, an objective truth independent of God's act. This truth that things made by a God are valuable, right? And that truth would be part of God's nature, right? So
Yeah.
do you see the kind of difference, the distinction that I'm making here?
Yeah. Hmm.
Well,
Yeah,
so
I know. Tricky.
here's something that if
Tricky
you
kind
have
of.
worry, if there's kind of a worry, it may not be a worry. I just maybe I'm assuming something. If there's a worry about God maybe losing some of his like power or like sovereignty or something, like I mean, think of like the common response to stuff like the rock problem or can God sin or this. It's like, well, it's not part of his nature. It's not part of his character, right? So I think on both views, there's going to be a restriction on sovereignty because it's not like God could desire something different. It's not like God could desire to murder someone on Tuesday. You
Yeah,
know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
So
Right, right. Yeah, it's not really
those
that
are
I'm
my
worried. It's just
okay.
like, yeah, that's not really worry. It's more just
Okay.
my view. Like I always try to look for an option, like an explanatory option that involves like acts.
Yeah.
Like people doing things, God doing things, the sort of instead of qualities. So like to
Yeah.
me, like precedes quality. Like act is what causes quality, not quality. I don't
Yeah.
know how to say that, but like I want goodness to be the result of an act, not just the result of a thing. Because acts to me are just seem more interesting as explanations, more satisfactory. So if I could explain
Okay.
goodness in terms of God's acts, like his desire, something active in him, rather than explaining them in terms of, well, they just have this quality, that sounds more boring. Like it's just not as
Yeah.
interesting. It's not as satisfying.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say, no, I can explain that quality because of this act or this thing that's in God, who's a living being interacting with the world. That seems more interesting to me. That's the only reason. Now you might be right, but that's the only reason I'm looking for that kind of explanation. I just wanted to. It's not the
That's
sovereign.
completely fair. So the way that I'm thinking about it is imagine a beautiful red rose, right?
Okay.
Now, there's a sense in which maybe we want something that builds a bridge between this rose and beauty, right? It would be a
Yeah.
little bit boring in your view to say that this rose just happens to have beauty.
This is beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
like we want like well what makes it beautiful? Like what thing is making it beautiful? And so okay, I see this. Okay, so there is like maybe an explanatory advantage on your view, like greater explanatory depth because like mine just kind of stops at this thing is I might say something like, well, it has to. has to have value. But like,
Yeah.
that's all. It's like brute necessity. Like, who? No one cares about that. Like,
Yeah.
well, but so okay, this I think I've brought this up in 3 podcasts so far, so I'm sorry if I'm just like repeating myself. Like, but like no,
No.
like so this might turn on a Euthyphro issue, and this is okay. So this is my favorite response to moral arguments and everything, and I think it's super effective. And like, I don't know, I think it's something that I don't hear a whole lot about, but it seems pretty clear. But I could be just misguided. Anyway, so there's a kind of sense in which, let's say, God is the bridge between this rose and value, right? God causes this rose to be valuable, right?
Yes.
There's a question here of, well, why did God choose this rose to be valuable, right? And if you appeal to his perfect nature, then you're just moving the step back, and you're basically saying that rose was valuable in the first place, and that entailed a desire to make it valuable. So now you just agree with me that roses are just intrinsically valuable, and there's nothing to bridge that gap. But the thing is, if um if you say that there's no explanation for why God made this rose to be valuable, it's brute and random, if you will. Maybe there's a choice involved, but like, it doesn't do much explanation. It doesn't explain much, because you're just saying that, oh, there's a thing that wanted it to be valuable. It's like, that's kind of a little ad hoc, like,
Yeah, I
so
don't
you,
like that. I don't like that.
so you have a theory on one side that says the rose just has value, and that's kind of boring. I agree, but then you have another one that says, well, there's something that explains why the rose has value, but I don't know why it would give it value. It just does, and that's also kind of boring. So like, maybe maybe this one still kind of wins out because
Same. Just different versions of the same thing.
somewhat.
Okay, now I'm thinking maybe we can make a distinction between the fact that something has value and our ability to recognize the value. Because maybe the reason we recognize the value, because things can have value and we have no idea. But
Yeah,
somehow, usually it seems, we can recognize value in things. And this is, we'll probably get into this later. But it might be that so the thing has value. It maybe the rose just has the value of beauty,
yeah.
but because God, um, well, I don't know. I mean,
We got
yeah,
meta so fast.
yeah, because like to me, it just seems more interesting if you say the rose is beautiful because the parts of the rose are arranged in a way that God likes,
Yeah,
that he likes, rather
yeah.
than so. But then you're saying that the only reason he likes that is because he's good, and so, or
Or
he.
or maybe there's no reason why he likes it, and then that's also boring, right?
Yeah, I don't know. That's okay. I'm gonna have to think about that.
Well,
That's
but
tough.
here's the thing. I'm gonna give your theory some love here, because like, at least you're explaining something, right? So I like this principle. Josh Rasmussen is, man. I'm just like repeating myself over and over again. I need to stop. But like, anyway. So he has this principle where it's like, explain as far as you can, right?
Hmm.
So in reality, we wouldn't expect something to not have an explanation. Our presumption when we investigate reality is that things do have explanations, right? And if we can
Yeah, yeah,
explain
yeah.
it, that's probably a good move to make. So maybe there's some explanation for it. I guess in the context of philosophy of religion, this is not exactly what we're doing here, and it shouldn't be. But I guess like, if I'm like debating someone, right, and someone were to say that, well, a God's required for this kind of beauty to exist, I would just kind of ask. I would bring up Euthyphro thing and be like, well, why does God have to be the origin of it? I could, maybe there's some explanation for why the rose is beautiful, right? But why does it have to be an agent, right? It actually kind of seems as though maybe like a random ball of matter that just happens to have the property of giving rise to value in roses, right, would be just as good of an explainer, because they're both equally ad hoc and arbitrary. Um, but at least there is some explanation on this view. And there is kind of an intuitive plausibility, like maybe an agent did it. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
forget the philosophy, like there's kind of some intuitive thing going on here.
Well, yeah, I just thought like value in the world isn't usually it's usually because of people.
Yeah.
Like it's always because
Okay.
some person gave it value, like always, almost always. Then there's a few things like roses that aren't that way because no human made it, right? But
Yeah.
like most things that have value, it's because someone gave it value. So you could make an argument, that's not super tight, but you just make an argument like, well, generally, value is better explained by agency than by randomness or by some
No. Yeah.
object,
Like
some person behind it.
that's
So, yeah,
yeah. No. That's pretty. I think it's a pretty standard argument. Really, I think that's what people. Yeah, I think you just hit on a common apologetical argument. um,
yeah,
no. So and it's interesting because it does seem to still. So you can think of it in terms of, well, humans are the reason why there's value. But you can also just turn it on its head and be like, well, it just turns out that a lot of value has to do with humans, right? So it's less that humans are causing value and more there are facts about what is valuable, and a lot of those facts have to do with humans. Um, and it's not like a. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Maybe,
You know,
maybe. I don't know. I don't know.
okay. Well, all right. We've been on the meta level for a while,
Yeah,
so we should.
maybe we can
Okay,
move up
so
with that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what should we've gone back and forth about what value is.
Yeah.
Just in the abstract, but let's get into some details of it.
So maybe we can settle on some kind of tentative conception of value and then work. Well, maybe, honestly, a lot of people kind of make normative assessments. We all kind of make similar assessments based on different theories of what value is. Maybe we don't even need to say what value actually is because we're all just kind of going to agree anyway. If you're an anti-realist, it's going to be, what does my psychology say? Which is going to agree with the realist who's like intuiting aesthetic facts. So yeah, okay. So I guess I have a question
Yeah,
here.
I don't know if we need to have a definition. Let's just because yeah, I don't think that'll be a
Yeah,
problem.
yeah, no, no.
Uh,
Yeah. So we've talked about this a little bit. So are there different kinds of value?
yeah. Now I'm not super educated on this. I'm sure there's all kinds of distinctions people make, but
Yeah,
I just know a big one is is intrinsic value and instrumental value.
yeah,
Uh, and to me, like just the most obvious example that I think of is like humans have intrinsic value, animals have instrumental value.
yeah.
That's okay. Now
You are
that might be a
crazy,
little,
Steve. You're great. Oh gosh.
that might be a
Yeah.
little debatable, but that to me that just makes sense. Like humans just have value because they have value. It's not really relative to anything else. Now, well, it might be relative to God, probably is
Yeah.
actually, but animals have value in terms of what they can do for
Yeah. Yeah. No.
humans.
So yeah, I'm thinking. I guess a small. I mean, humans presumably can have both, right? And animals could have
Yeah.
both. So there's a sense in which, well, let's say I need something from Ben. So I say, well, I mean, maybe every transaction you make, it's kind of like you're using the person instrumentally, right?
Hmm.
Let's say I
Yeah.
want Ben's wallet. He has a really cool wallet or something. And I'm like, I'll give you $5 for the wallet. I've just kind of used him instrumentally to get this wallet. That was a really bad example, but yeah. So
No, but
maybe
yeah,
it can be both. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, then so like instrumental value then to define that would just be like its value relative to what is it like the greater good is the thing that
Yeah.
it's not them like there's a good greater than them but they're the means to that good so like they have a good in relation to the good that they
Yeah.
produce result in or whatever.
Yeah, like they're useful for a greater good, basically.
Yeah,
Um,
but they're good because they're useful. They have a bit of goodness just for being useful.
Yeah.
And that's why they have that value, that
Well, they
instrumental
have.
value.
So this is interesting. So I actually just I did a quick little bit of research yesterday from the Stanford Encyclopedia, and this little thing you just said they kind of touched on for like 12 paragraphs something. It was like
Oh,
the the instrumental value has a little bit of value itself. There's actually kind of a question about that because like does it have intrinsic value because of its instrumental value? Right. The
uh,
mere fact that a thing can be used to attain greater goods, does that itself make it intrinsically good?
hmm.
So that's kind of a question that philosophers have just been like, you know, about.
So then what would intrinsic value be? Is that just like another just intuition we have, like something just good because it's good? Or is there an explanation for that? Can we define it? Not really.
And so I think there was on this article there was some question how to conceptualize an intrinsic good. Like there's a question of when we mean that something's intrinsically good, do we mean that this thing would cease to exist if its goodness left it? So here's an example. A rose is beautiful, right? But I can actually imagine the beauty leaving the rose, but the rose is still there. Like
Yeah.
maybe in some weird world, like it's not beautiful or something. But there's also a sense which maybe I can't intuit that. Maybe when I think of a non-beautiful rose, I'm not thinking of the right kind of thing. So there's a complex conversation about what it means to be intrinsic. But I think minimally, I guess for this conversation, we can interpret it as something like it's non-instrumental. Like we pursue it for its own sake, despite what its nature is.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. Okay.
something like
Interesting.
something like truth, knowledge, beauty.
Okay. Um, okay, another thing I was thinking about. Yeah, you mentioned truth and knowledge and beauty is I think I've thought about truth, goodness, and beauty. And it's like all three of them are kinds of value, aren't they? Because there's like truth value. So like
Okay.
this is just a kind of a random question, but like does truth have value just because it's truth? Or can truth be not valuable? Or is truth like always valuable no matter what? Now, I'm not talking about like telling the truth, because obviously that's not always valuable.
No. Yeah.
And who you're telling it, all that. But like just truth as such, like when a thought or a statement, just when any proposition, any sort of thing corresponds to reality or the way reality is that valuable when something lines up, no matter what? Is truth just a value? It's just valuable?
I wonder if we can talk about truth without appealing to some kind of um, epistemological nature to it. I mean, I'm thinking of the value maybe wouldn't be contained in truth; it'd be contained in knowledge. Um, maybe
Okay.
I don't know what it would mean to say that truth exists independently of like there are true facts about the world, but it's like there can't be false facts about the world. Um, you know,
Yeah, right.
so I guess the only facts that exist would be the true ones. Like I guess all the facts would be valuable, which is fine. Maybe
Okay,
I'm
okay. Well, let me explain like what led me to that question, which is this in fiction, like there's the different genre. There's like fantasy fiction and romance and mystery, and all of those are really looked down on by the literary establishment. They're
really
really looked down on. Yeah, like a lot. Like you can't win the Pulitzer Prize with a steamy romance book or a crazy fantasy
yeah.
book about dragons. You cannot. That's absolutely impossible. And
Okay.
so literary fiction is like the artistic fiction. It's a genre of fiction like the other ones, except
Yeah.
it's the good version. It's the genre where like people write good books or supposedly write good books.
Okay.
Now, the one thing that all those books have in common is that they're realistic. And so it's called literary realism. So like if you want to write a literary fiction book, you have to write it in the like style of literary realism, just like fantasy
Okay.
is. And so I wonder why is that valued so much? Because realism basically just means like things that seem true to me. That's what
Mm.
it's like, things that seem
Oh.
true. But here's another thing, really, is that a lot of, to me, like reading literary realism books, they don't actually seem realistic. And so they're all nice and beautiful, and they might win the Pulitzer and the prizes and stuff. But I've been reading this autobiography by this guy from Norway. It's really famous. His name is Karl Ove Knausgaard, and the book is called My Struggle. It's this big book that was a sensation. Like people say he's going to win the Nobel because it's just autobiography and it's extremely boring. Like he'll tell you like everything about like how he changed his daughter's diaper and what he made for dinner and random conversations he had with people at daycare. Like it's not about anything. It's literally not about anything. And yet it's so like readable. It's so enjoyable. And it just seems so valuable, I think, just because he's telling the truth.
Yeah.
That's the only explanation I can think of because what's weird is you read the blurbs on the back, like people praising it, and none of them really pin down what's actually good about it. They're like, there is something about this work that makes it endlessly readable, or they're like,
Yeah.
there's something at the core, but they never say what it is. And the only thing I can think of is just that it feels so true. It's
Yeah.
just that's what makes it valuable.
No, that's so fascinating. So I recently got done reading C.S. Lewis's Surprised by Joy,
Okay.
and that was perhaps one of the most truthful books I have ever come across in my entire life. And I think the word that I want to use here is the word relatability.
Yeah.
So yeah, because that book was highly relatable, and I was like,
Yeah.
this book is fantastic in virtue of
Hmm.
its relatability. Um, so earlier when I was talking about things that have intrinsic value, like truth, beauty, and goodness, and all that stuff, that might be that truth in that context might be a little bit different than relatability in this context. But I think it's worth talking about both. It's just as interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Because it almost seems to me like um well, okay, if I'm gonna try to say that truth has value, I need to explain why. Because that seems like a really big general statement to make. And I need like what's and I think relatability is a part of that because I felt that too. I read a book it's called A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. It's like my favorite book. And I think a big reason is because it's so relatable. Like he's
Yeah.
like growing up in this religious context. He gets all into aesthetics, comes up with the theory of beauty when he's like way too young to be doing that. And like wants to be an artist, but you know, he doesn't really know if he is yet. And it's so relatable. I'm like, man, this is like
This is Stephen Ramsey. Yeah.
I know yeah, I know what he's talking about, you know? And so I wonder if that's like a relative version of truth, where something in my reality corresponds with something in another person's reality.
Yeah.
Why would that be valuable? Like,
Well, so here's something I'm also thinking about because like you're not a huge fan of fantasy from what I remember. Um
no.
Steven does not like fantasy. No, anyway, but here's what I'm thinking, right? So like the stuff that I love most about my fantasy interests are stuff that are relatable, realistic. Like
Hmm.
maybe there's emotional ties that are just really
Yeah.
real to me. Maybe there's some kind of, plot device that I just sympathize with or something. And it's actually interesting because like the creativity and the uniqueness of the fantasy world enhances the realism. So there's kind of a paradoxical thing here where it's like,
Yeah.
um, I don't know. Like, I mean, it's different. It would be hard to. I feel like I don't want to appeal to categorical difference here, but like, there's a sense in which maybe a fantasy novel like can't be compared to like a biography. Like, they're just two very different kinds of things. Like, I mean, generally, you might just be like, yeah, well, biographies are better. But like, when you really start to pin it down, like they just seem like two different animals that are trying to do two. I don't. Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not sure, but that's a question I really want answered. Is
Okay.
like why? Not that we have to answer it, but like that's just
No.
something I want to know, which is why. I mean, you know, maybe it's that when someone tells the truth, we like them usually, not
Okay.
always. But if someone is generally an honest person, that's like you know ethos and like
Oh, I see
Aristotle's
what you're
ethos,
saying.
pathos, whatever the last one is. But like when someone tells the truth, we just like them. Like someone who tells it as it is, someone who's honest with you, someone who's open with you. I like them more than someone who's just like closed off, never says anything. Like we just like people like
Yeah.
that. And so I was thinking maybe that's why I like these books is because I like the guy. I just like the author because he's the kind of guy who will tell me the truth. He's the kind of guy who's going to be honest with me and tell me about his life, and I like that. Rather than some author who constructs this whole world and I don't know him at all. I'm like, who's the author? All I know is like his world that he's made for me, but I don't know
Yeah,
him, so I don't like him. So I don't like his books that much. So it's
yeah,
like this tie between books and an author, and when the tie's like super tight and the author and the book are like the same, then I like the
yeah,
book because I like the person so much. Maybe.
yeah. No, I think when that's so interesting. This is getting into territory that like I don't think about a whole lot, but it's
Yeah, yeah.
I want to say something about that though. So there's a worry about being reductionistic. I'm not saying you are, but it's
Sure.
something to be. So my friend John, um, he 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 chastises me for my reductionism in philosophy. No, so I wonder because like I can actually imagine AI creating something that is very relatable and very honest and and it actually kind of has the same amount of value. Maybe it's missing the element that a human made it, but like it still has the value and virtue of its honesty. Maybe I'm not right about that. Maybe
I think that would actually be impossible. That's what it seems like to me on
well,
the
so
face of
I'm
it.
thinking about like a fantasy world, right? Where like none of this actually happened, but like there's relatable stuff in it. Um,
But AI could never be honest because AI doesn't live. It's not alive.
well,
AI could never be honest.
so imagine I create a fantasy world that reflects all of your internal life, right? Am I being honest? Let's say my fantasy world reflected all the problems Stephen Ramsey dealt with, right? Let's say I had access to your mind in some weird way. It'd be deep, powerful, honest, and relatable, but it wouldn't come from me, you know?
Yeah, I wouldn't say honest. I wouldn't call that honest. I would say that's
Yeah.
insightful. Maybe that's another kind of value, is when someone understands someone else really well. I think actually that is a kind of value. Like I
Yeah.
really like when someone can understand me and tell me the truth about myself. I like that so much. I think everyone
Yeah.
likes that. If you
Yeah.
have someone who understands you and will tell you just the way, if you're doing something wrong or if you're doing something right, someone who knows you it
Yeah.
has insight to you. We like that too. But that's not honesty. Honesty is like a self thing,
No,
you know?
yeah. Yeah,
So, but
this
I
might
mean, maybe that's just another an insightfulness or whatever you want to call it. It's just another version of honesty.
this might be a little explanatorily inadequate or something, but like, I mean, maybe there's value in the fact that it is honest as such, and then there's value in the fact that the origin of this honesty relates to it directly in some way. Like in the case, let's say I produce a work like an autobiography, and like I just pour my whole soul into it. That's valuable for two reasons: because it's honest, but it's also valuable because it's me, right? So there's two things that are valuable here.
Ooh, ooh,
Um,
yeah, okay.
and maybe they're not grounded in the same thing. Maybe they're both just kind of valuable at rock bottom. That's an idea.
Yeah, and maybe it's valuable because maybe honesty is valuable because we have a responsibility to people to be honest with them.
Yeah,
Maybe that's as simple as that. Yeah. It's just we're
yeah.
fulfilling responsibility like any other responsibility.
So that's interesting. It kind of makes me want to wonder if aesthetic value is ultimately grounded in moral value.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was okay.
I
So
wonder.
yeah, yeah, what about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have like. I'm just like, what are your thoughts? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, my theory, I think I've told you about aesthetics. My theory that I really want to believe is true, but I don't know if it is. But my theory
Yeah,
is that beauty is an absolute, but it's an absolute because beauty is just when things are arranged, or things or parts of things, either things or parts of things, are arranged relative to each other in the way that God wants them or desires them or prefers them, whatever you want to say,
yeah,
prefers them to be arranged. So that's what beauty is to me. So I think that is I think that's distinct from moral value because I would define moral value as when an agent does something, performs an act that,
yeah,
in the same way, God prefers, God desires, God wants them
yeah,
to. So to
yeah,
me, those are different because aesthetics is purely formal. But then again, an act is a thing. So if acts are relative to each other, then you could say like maybe a group of people all act in a certain aesthetic way, in a formal
Yeah,
way, where they all do these acts relative to each other, and all those acts are arranged in a way that God wants.
yeah.
So is it beautiful to act a certain way? But I don't
Well,
know.
here's I guess my simple thought on that. I mean, like moral goodness can participate in aesthetic goodness. So like a morally good act could be also aesthetic, but
Okay.
there are some aesthetic things that could never be morally good, right? It's like a sunset is aesthetically beautiful, maybe, but like there's no. I don't see the moral dimension to that.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So it just goes one way.
Yeah, just go one way. But
Yeah.
I suppose maybe we could make a distinction between natural beauty and human invention, the beauty created by human invention. Because maybe
Okay.
the beauty created by human invention would always be grounded in moral goodness, or maybe other natural beauty. I don't.
Yeah, maybe that seems right. But to me, I think natural beauty and human invention beauty are the same kind of thing. It's just natural beauty is when God doing it. So it's
Yeah,
the same. It's personal invention, except it's God. So it seems natural to
yeah.
us. Um, but it's the same thing going on. I
Okay.
think.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So maybe just at rock bottom, there's a distinction between um nearly natural beauty and beauty that is beautiful in virtue of its moral goodness. Maybe those are just two different kinds of beauty that are grounded in different things. Because here would be an example, right? So like we watch a ghost story together, or did you watch it,
Yeah, we
or
did. I watched it. I don't know if
yeah,
I think I watched it separate, but yeah, we both seen
yeah,
it. Yeah.
okay. This movie is aesthetically good. I think perhaps in virtue of its moral goodness, right, or moral
Okay.
complexity, right? Because like it's a relationship that the person dies and it's really sad, and like it's like obviously like moral. It's like between humans, and like there's like moral worth is involved because people die and stuff. This is different than like my appreciation of a rose, because I'm not appreciating the rose because of something that has to do with the human condition. That was the thought that I had. I don't know if it's an objection or anything. It's just something that I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I that seems I'm gonna need to untangle that for myself, I think. Like I
Yeah.
need to I don't know, That
No,
that's
that's
really cool.
well. Okay, so here's the thing. So did you have any more thoughts on that?
No, no, no. Let's go to the next thing.
All right, I'm gonna ask you a question. I'm gonna interview you for a second. So,
Okay.
why are persons valuable,
Um
or why do they have moral worth?
I think it's
This is the hardest question in all of philosophy.
yeah, I mean the very ungranulated answer is that they're made in the image of God, which explains nothing just by saying that. It's a cliche.
Somewhat.
So yeah. So that's a but I think maybe their value humans have value because they're the thing that is most similar to God.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's let's just go with
No,
that.
so that's not bad. What I guess the obvious way, like, what does it mean to be similar to God?
I mean, that's hard, but I mean, maybe just they're the thing that has the most things that they share with God.
Yeah.
The most qualities. They're the object that has the most qualities that are shared with God. No other object shares as many. So it's a quantitative thing. Shares many qualities with
Oh,
God. Like a leaf doesn't share a ton of qualities with God. It probably shares some. Not a ton. Whereas we share a ton. Not all of them. Obviously, we're not God. But we share a lot. That maybe.
so here's something to think about, right? So like, let's take the mind out of the equation, right? Let's say there's a rock that is all powerful, all good. Maybe it's the origin of all of goodness. Maybe in some sense it's timeless, so you could say it's omnipresent, or all of a sudden has three omnis in common with God. It seems like it has more in common with God than we do, but we still have a different kind of value than this rock does.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yeah.
maybe the amount of things in common. I wonder if that might be
Yeah, I
an
see what you're
explanation
saying.
that
Yeah, you're
would work.
probably right about that. There's
I'm
probably
not sure
things there.
because
No,
well,
but no, that seems just
yeah.
obviously true. Like, there's qualities that are more important to have than others. It's not
But then
just a
I mean,
quantity.
like maybe the mere fact that we might have human freedom and we might have conscious experience minds, maybe that makes us more similar to God than any amount of power would or something.
Yeah, maybe it just has to do with what it means to be what it means to be a well, no, I don't know. I
It's
mean,
so
it's
complicated.
like I'm just about to run into a bunch of tautologies by saying, well, what distinguishes us from everything else is that we're people and they're not, and God is a person. So we're you think that's a person like God. But this is not explaining anything. So I mean, we could maybe just try to say, okay, let's take a human over here, and then let's take some other objects and figure out what it is that objects don't have that humans have.
That's
And then
exactly what I was doing.
oh, okay, yeah.
Um, no, like I mean, well, maybe not exactly what I was about to do. I was gonna bring up the question because you mentioned this earlier, and I was gonna wonder what explains the moral difference between animals and non-human, or no, non-human animals and human animals or humans.
Between humans and okay. I mean,
Yeah.
um, it seems like yeah,
It's
yeah,
so
maybe,
complicated, man.
maybe freedom.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I know what it is, but I don't know how to like yeah, maybe freedom, but or the thing like we just think on a different level than they do.
Yeah. Okay. So that's
I don't
interesting.
know.
So we're kind of we're kind of nailing some things that make humans valuable, right?
Okay,
So
yeah,
maybe something like your will, right? Something like some kind of rationality.
yeah.
Um, okay, that's interesting. Okay,
Maybe
do you
maybe
do what?
emotions. Maybe put that in there.
Something like that, maybe. Yeah, no, I
Maybe.
mean, I was just asking. I just think it's a very interesting question. It's like super complicated. Like, I mean, so this past summer, I did like, so I worked this really mindless job, and so I had a lot of time to just think about these kind of questions. And I thought about this exact question. Like, I beat my brain in submission. I was like, this is really weird, and I want to know what you think about this. So I asked myself the question all summer. I was like, what gives humans moral worth and or persons moral worth? Couldn't figure it out. I thought I landed on some things. I actually explored this topic to get out of veganism because I wanted to meet. Couldn't find the answer, so I'm here. I am. I'm stuck, I guess. But
Well,
no. So it's interesting because like I couldn't find it. Like there was a few candidates. Like I might have some problems with rationality and have some problems with the freedom thing and like but the thing is, like I was talking to my friend here, and he was saying the mere fact that we can't explain why persons are valuable or have a different kind of value than other things and are more valuable than other things. The mere fact that we can't explain that is actually evidence for God's existence or something. Like maybe there's some kind of concept to human dignity that actually suggests God's existence, right? I don't know.
interesting.
What do you think about that?
I don't know. Like, I
Do
don't
what?
know. That just
You kind
seems that I don't know. Oh, sorry. I don't know why that would
of
suggest God exists. That just seems like maybe you haven't found the answer. I don't know why that would suggest God exists.
no, yeah. I mean, it's maybe it's because like we've run out of explanatory devices. So like maybe if we were going to explain why something is valuable, we might appeal to a mind, and if we can't appeal to other things, then we could. I don't know.
So we'd have to appeal to a mind like other than a human mind. Is that
Ah, well, here's the thing. This actually kind of turns on. If I'm going to kind of respond to this, I guess there's two different kinds of explainers when it comes to value. There's normative explainers, and then there's causal explainers, right? So when So let's take the rose, right? So we can ask, why is this rose beautiful? And you might, if you're gonna give a normative explanation for why the rose is beautiful, you might say, well, it's red. It is maybe symmetrical or asymmetrical in the right way. It has this length of a stem, which is that kind of aesthetic length or something. We can answer that in terms of normative explanation. We could also explain why is it beautiful, and we could say that, well, something causes it to be beautiful, or something causes its beautiful part to be beautiful, right? Like maybe God intervenes and like builds the bridge between the rose and value. Um, those are two different kinds of explanations. So I think here, maybe the theist is making a mistake in saying that just because we don't have a normative explanation for it, um, doesn't mean I don't know. I think they might be making some kind of mistake there. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's like
Huh.
if you like someone could come up with some explanation for why humans have moral worth without to like, or
Yeah.
maybe they're just relativize it. Like just say that they don't have absolutely moral worth. It's just how evolution turned things out. Like we're just at the
Yeah.
top of how it is, and if someone takes over, then then we're not going to be have moral worth anymore. Whatever that being is will. Like it's all just sort of
Yeah.
relative. Like it just
Yeah.
happens on planet Earth. We have more value than the other things because it just happened that way. It's just there's no explanation. It's just
Yeah. Bruteness, I guess. Yeah, no, okay. So that kind of gets a little bit in the weeds. Maybe we can push past that a little bit, and this might get into some things that you, unless you had some more thoughts on the other one. Did you have any? Okay. Yeah, so I have this question here, and we've kind of touched it, but maybe this is a question that we could explore and try to figure out.
okay.
So so is there a difference between the aesthetic and the beautiful?
Um, I don't think so.
Okay.
It doesn't seem like it. It seems
Okay.
like I'm gonna have to move real quick. Sorry.
You're totally good.
But it seems like sorry, you might have to cut all this out. I'm just gonna.
No, you're fine. Editing takes too much work. I don't even care.
Okay. No, it. Okay, there we go. It seems like the beautiful is just when I don't know. Like if something's aesthetic, it's just another word for beautiful. I don't know. What would the distinction be?
I don't know. So there's a reason I brought this question up, and I don't remember what it was. I mean, so here's the okay. It's not exactly weird calling an iPhone beautiful, but like it makes more sense to call it aesthetic as if there's a distinction. Maybe I'm just intuition. Like when I look at a sunset, it would actually seem a little bit better to call it beautiful than aesthetic, and not just in virtue of the fact that it is more beautiful or something. It has more of something, but plausibly there might be some kind of categorical difference between the two. Like it's just a very different kind of aesthetic. Um, because okay, so like style, like fashion, right?
Hmm.
It feels aesthetic, right? So maybe beauty and aesthetics can all be subsumed under art, right? But there's plausibly different kinds of art, maybe like beautiful art, aesthetic art. I don't know. Well, so okay, so here's an example. So there's an art museum here that you would love. It's like fantastic. Like I go into this art museum, right, and there's a BLM exhibit, right, and it actually has all of these posters from like protests and riots that happened in Phoenix, right? So it has all of it's a big massive exhibit. It'd be really weird for me to go in there and be like, man, this is just an aesthetic exhibit, right? Like that would be actually kind of weird to say. Like maybe it's aesthetic, but like you're saying the wrong thing here. Like there's something kind of Also, maybe beauty might be the wrong word for it. It'd be powerful. That's a kind of word, you know. Or if you're more conservative, then maybe a different kind of word for it. But like, but yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just yeah, because then there's like sublime. You're not about to
fine.
say you're not about
Yeah,
to say the iPhone is sublime.
yeah,
And you can't say like a pretty tree. You could say it's beautiful, but maybe don't say a tree is sublime. Maybe a
yeah,
sun, yeah. Maybe a huge waterfall, or maybe like a crazy, like rainbow mixed with
yeah.
like clouds and stuff, like something like that. Um, so maybe it's just that, like, because sublime is almost like a combination of of like seeing something beautiful, but also being afraid. That's what it is. A lot of people say
Okay,
that. Whereas beauty, it might just be simply like, it's just arranged in the most, like, I don't know, like pleasant way possible. And then aesthetic is like, it's not maybe the most, I don't know, like not the
yeah,
most, like it's not like optimal. It's just it looks nice. It like meets the
yeah,
minimum threshold of nice, or maybe it's a bit above that. So like I could say, like, you can say so many things are aesthetic, whereas you
yeah.
can't say so many things are beautiful. So it seems like aesthetic maybe is just a lower form of beauty. Maybe?
Hmm. Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
was thinking about putting them all on a spectrum. Like, I wonder if they're all on a spectrum of power because, like, and I don't know how. Like, thinking of the BLM exhibit actually got me thinking because, like, I think maybe conceptualizing in terms of power really matters here, right? Because, like, if we have an iPhone, right, compared to a sunset, like this thing is meaningless, right? You know what I mean? I don't know. There's just something inconsequential about the iPhone compared to the sunset. But there's also something kind of inconsequential about the sunset compared to a social justice movement, right?
Hmm.
But then again, like I you might be hard pressed to find someone who says something like this. Yeah, the BLM exhibit was more beautiful than the sunset. It's like maybe they would both think they're good things and really cool and valuable and beautiful in their own ways, but to compare them seems like a weird move to make. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I d- yeah I
I was just thinking about that when I was making this like thoughts and outlines, and I was like, I wonder.
okay. Okay, wait. Maybe there's a route to take, which is the cognitive aspect of these different aesthetic qualities, because I was reading this article about subtlety.
Okay.
Subtlety has an aesthetic quality. And they were saying subtlety, why isn't it an aesthetic quality? It doesn't really seem like it, but like if a book is subtle rather than just
Yeah.
being like in your face, it's better. That's clear. Everyone knows
Yeah.
that. If
Yes.
you're all in your
Absolutely.
face, it's
It,
bad. And if you're not, it's good, right? But they were saying
yeah.
why? Why? And why was because subtlety requires you to do more cognitive work. So there's a
Okay.
cognitive aspect of subtlety as an aesthetic value. Is it requires you to do more work to figure out, okay, like say a poem that just says, you know, or like a hymn. They always just like say like Jesus loves me. This I know, for the Bible tells me so. Whereas you have a
Yeah.
poem that maybe gets the same message, but it's really subtle and it's
Yeah.
wrapped
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
this interesting tapestry of words and all this, right? It's because it requires you to do more work to get the message. Whereas
Yeah.
if you're just gonna, like quickly get the message,
Yeah.
find it, right? So
Yeah.
maybe like uh maybe say like the BLM exhibit has more cognitive value than the sunset. The sunset doesn't really have any cognitive value. So it's
Yeah.
beauty. It's just beautiful. It's just nice.
Yeah.
Whereas the BLM exhibit, it has a lot of I don't know, like your cognition is involved. It's like you have to understand where it's coming from. There's a lot that goes into it. Like a lot of understanding, a lot of cognitive work that goes
Yeah.
into appreciating it. And then if it's successful, goes into like finding pleasure in it.
Yeah. Maybe this could explain like the relevant difference between the two, right?
Yeah.
One
I don't know
requires
how
you
you
to
feel about
really
that.
like internalize it, intellectualize it. That seems plausible. I actually want to like go even a little bit deeper on this point because I think we can tie it back to something we said earlier.
Yeah.
Because plausibly, subtlety, the value of subtlety is explained in terms of the value of authenticity and truth and relatability. right?
Oh.
Because I think in our own personal lives, when we try to figure out the world, I it is never simple. And if you think it's simple, you're wrong,
Oh yeah.
right? And I think that's why subtlety is valuable. Something that's really interesting in acting, if you watch a really fantastic movie with a fantastic actor or actress, tiny little things they do, like will just send a message that is infinitely better than like some random person who's an amateur actor, just going about their role. So, and I think it's explained in terms of relatability and truth and that, yeah.
Yeah, in truth. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And all of that. Yeah, so okay, so now I'm wondering, is there a cognitive aspect, or is maybe that just like irrelevant?
No, no, so I don't
To
think it's relevant. No.
Okay, so how does that play into maybe relatability? Is there a cognitive aspect to relatability?
Well, so I think a necessary condition of this subtlety slash complexity is a cognitive factor, like part of it. Because like in order to understand complexity and subtlety, you have to
Yeah,
think through it. And like
yeah,
I think the appeal to the subtlety thing was, or the thing, no, the cognitive thing was helpful because it distinguished between the BLM exhibit and the sunset.
yeah.
I think that's one nugget of truth that it can be helpful to explain differences, and I wonder how we can tie that
Yeah, I
together.
wonder, like, with relatability, like, because you could have a really dumb, stupid person, and a dumb, stupid person writes a book,
Yeah,
and the dumb, stupid person reads the book, and they're like, "Wow, this is valuable." Now, it's just,
yeah,
it seems like
yeah,
they'd be wrong about that. Like,
yeah.
no, 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 no. Like, it's a bad book, and you're just a bad person, and really, it's disvalue because now you're deceived because
No, okay.
that book actually has no value.
So was the example something like a dumb person accidentally wrote something really relatable? Was that the example?
No, it's just
Oh,
they wrote it relatable to another dumb person. Like it was a
oh.
stupid person writing something bad about their lives, but someone just like them read it and was like, "Whoa, I relate to that so much." Like,
Well, so I wonder what it means to be dumb then, right? Okay, so,
yeah, yeah, yeah. We
well,
okay, that's the question
I
though.
so okay, if it's merely dumb, right? This is crazy. If it's merely dumb, I don't think it's bad. I think if it's like morally not if it's morally vicious, like there's vice in it, I think it matters. So maybe, yeah,
Okay, wait, I just had a perfect example.
this is
I
so
think
good.
maybe,
Okay,
which is that there's a lot of poetry that's really popular.
okay,
But what's wrong with it is it's not subtle at all, and it's
it's
not
dumb.
complex. But why? Let's not say dumb, but yeah, it is. But let's not use that. So like, but why it's so popular, and it's most of popular poetry is this kind of poetry. Why it's so popular is because it's relatable,
Yeah,
but it's bad. So I wonder if relatability is only a good. It's not just dumb. It's actually bad poetry because it's not subtle. It's not complex. It's not beautiful. All it
no,
is like I woke up today and had a hard time getting out of bed, but then I remembered "Seize the Day," and they make it a poem, and everyone reads that and it's like, oh my goodness, like that's so
yeah,
good. I relate to
yeah,
that so much. So like maybe relatability is only a good value of something if the thing is good already.
yeah. This is so interesting. No, okay, so I think that's on the same spectrum of relatability. I just think those bad poems are just less relatable, right? So I think
No,
the
but they're
less
not to all these millions of people.
well, here's the thing, right? So like the less specific you get, the less relatable it is, right? So it's still relatable, right? So like, someone's like, "Oh my goodness, I had a hard time getting out of bed this morning. Woe is me." Like that's kind of relatable, but I'm just like cringe because I don't care. This is a human condition. But like if you say something like okay,
Yeah, wait, no, 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 no. Actually,
yeah,
that's actually genius.
yeah,
That makes total sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
No,
So
yeah, yeah. Wait, so wait, say that again. It was like the less specific you get, the less
yeah,
relatable it is.
yeah,
Technically, it's
yeah,
not relative.
yeah,
That's actually true. That is
yeah.
actually true. That
It
the
actually
less
is.
you get, the less relatable the work of art is. Yeah,
Yeah,
dude, that's actually genius.
yeah. No, okay, so
That's pretty good.
I suppose maybe to tacked on here, I think it is possible for someone to be completely unaware of how subtle reality is as well.
Oh yeah.
So, um, this might be an instance of where someone's interpretation of something has nothing to do with whether or not it's valuable, right? So let's
Yeah.
say, like, let's just say there's like this. I apologize, Visco girls. But let's just say there's this like TikTok Visco girl, whatever, who just like it doesn't. I shouldn't generalize. Okay. Let's not use those adjectives. Let's just say there's someone who is obsessed with like maybe these TikToks that maybe I don't know how do I word this. Um, there's someone who maybe let's just say they're on their phone a lot. They look at Instagram. They're obsessed with YouTube. All of these things. They're not actually really aware of their own life and their social life. Maybe they're
Mm.
just kind of like blank spacing it, throughout life, right? And they read something like, what would be an example? Maybe one of these autobiographies that
Yeah,
you're suggesting.
they're
They
like
read one of these things and they're just like, "What the hell are they
they
talking
don't
about?"
understand. Yeah.
Like that has nothing to do. Just because it's not relatable to someone who hasn't thought much about their existence doesn't mean it's not valuable. Um, so
Okay, wait. So okay, that's true. I definitely yeah. So then, is it like the relatability? Let's try to say like the relatability of a thing is the it's like it seems like say something is super relatable technically. Like say
yeah,
like it's like the most honest, most well-crafted autobiography of all time, the best literary
yeah,
autobiography of all time. It has that maximum amount of relatability, but that means it requires like really smart readers, or at least really
yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
self-aware or whatever readers.
Self-aware, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So so how do we formulate that? Like relatability is in relation to the potential like self-awareness of the readers. Like
So here,
how can we
okay,
turn it into an absolute?
this is something that I was just thinking about. So this actually might start to explain the beauty or value, whatever word we're using here, in philosophy. So I think trivially, there's a distinction between what happens in the world and how we interpret the world, right?
Yep.
Now, presumably, there's one way the world goes. Whatever happens, happens, right? And there's a lot of small things that make the world run, right? There's tiny little itty bitty particles, right, that just like affect everything, right? I mean, there's a lot of things going on at once, right? But the thing is, we can't always perceive that. Most of the time, we can't. And a lot of the time, we don't exactly know what's going on. So what we do is we kind of create this general picture of what's going on with a lot of vague terms that kind of hit the dartboard, but at the end of the day, we're kind of shooting in the dark a little bit, right? So,
Okay.
well, this is kind of strange because, like, the point I was trying to make was that, like, things that are a little more vague are a little less real, right?
Exactly.
But
Yes.
but it's interesting because, like, vague vagueness in poetry kind of has like an aesthetic quality to it. Like there's kind of if it's not clear, like that's kind of a good thing. Um, so
Right.
maybe
Right. But
yeah.
that those are two different kinds of vague. I think very different kinds of vague.
Okay, okay.
Because the vagueness in poetry is sometimes because of its specificity. So there's the
Oh,
really specific
okay.
end, and then there's the vague, like where it's not specific, and then there's the like really clear and then vague.
Yeah.
And the poetry version is that it's not very clear and it's vague. It's but
Okay.
poetry is a lot of times very specific, so that's a different kind of vague. It's
So that kind of vagueness or unclarity would be the similar kind, like if like us, like uneducated physicists, like open up a physics book and started reading about black holes, like that kind
yeah,
of thing.
it would be non-clear to us. Yeah,
So I might push back against this a little bit because I think some of my favorite films are vague and not in that sense. They're vague in a sense of they're trying to tell me something, but they're purposefully removing details to leave room for interpretation. And so I guess at the end of yeah, so well I was gonna bring up I forgot about that movie. A Ghost Story is a great example. The Florida Project, I mean, well that wasn't I don't
but
know.
I'd say both of those aren't. I mean, yeah, they're unclear, but I wouldn't say they're not specific. Like they're very, especially the Florida Project. The Florida Project is
Well,
a
yeah, that was a
very
bad example.
specific movie.
So that's actually a horrible example because the Florida example perfectly illustrates the authenticity subtlety thing. Like that purposefully that is
Exactly.
thematically what we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so
yeah, yeah.
really helpful. So like audiences who haven't watched the Florida Project Ghost Story, go watch them now and then come back and let them.
Yes.
But there's a different kind of vagueness or so the Florida Project's not vague. Um, maybe
No,
I'm
it is. No. I think the Florida Project is definitely vague.
okay.
I think it's the good kind of vague. I mean, I think it's the good. It's subtle and it's vague because they don't explain. They don't explain all the specificity. They just hand it to you, and that's I think some of the best stuff is where
Okay,
they just tell you a very realistic, very believable story, but they don't. They leave it for you to interpret yourself. They don't at the end like they don't explain anything.
well, okay, so I think the movie does utilize both. So at the end, what happens is the little girl and her friends run off to Disney World or Disneyland, like, and then we're like, well, what does that mean? Like, that's the kind of vagueness that's different from the authenticity vagueness, right? Or the super specific clarity vagueness that I don't think
Yes.
the Florida Project has, because I don't think anyone's confused watching, the mother trying to like support her and her child by doing awful things. Like there's like no confusion there, but it's subtle and it's real and it's like I guess relatable in some human sense. Um,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have that. It's very different than that vagueness that's present at the end of the movie when they just go off to Disneyland. And like, what does it mean? Does that mean they're going to live a life of their own? Like, I mean, are they going to grow up together with different families? Like, what, is it like a metaphor for them moving on and like what you know?
Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah. I agree. Yeah, there's two different. Yeah, I agree. But okay, I'm thinking right now, let's try to summarize uh
Okay,
everything we've sort of found out because I think this last 10 minutes has been really good. But
okay,
let's try to summarize what it is.
okay,
And I think what we found is that there is something that all these aesthetic qualities have in common. There's one thing that they all have in common: subtlety, um, relatability, realistic or
yeah,
realism, um, honesty.
yeah.
Yeah, let's say those four. There's something all four of those have in common. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, I think you were saying something about the intent kind of matters. I mean, I don't know if we got into this too much, but like if I guess a typewriter accidentally wrote out a super relatable story that would
Oh,
actually
yeah.
be less valuable.
I think that's honesty. Let's put that in like honesty
Okay.
presumes that intent. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So subtlety, relatability, realism, and honesty. What those all have in common is that they capture, I think, the world as it really is. Let's like from the writer's side. Let's say
Yeah.
nobody's read my book yet. I'm just coming up with a book, and I want to be honest in the book. I want it to be subtle. I want it to be
Mhm.
relatable, and I want it to be realistic. What I'm trying to do is capture the world as it really is from my perspective.
Yeah.
So what it is truth. Like I want my work to reflect the way that the world actually is. So it's
Yeah.
almost like truth, like that correspondence between my book
Hmm.
and the world as it actually is,
No.
not as
Yeah.
people think it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Like it's truth. And then because it's truth, then that results in when the reader reads it, then they have such a more powerful interaction with it because they recognize that truth. That I under and the truth, understanding the truth requires understanding on my part. And it
Yeah.
requires understanding on their part for them to get the pleasure from it. But
Yeah.
it's really, I think it's truth at the center of it all,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
No.
is not what you'd expect because they're all aesthetic qualities.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So there.
They're not epistemological, but it turns out that they all have this epistemological quality in common.
Okay. No. It's so interesting. I think everything you just said there is very insightful and very true. And obviously this is true, but like I think there's some work to be done, and I think this work has to do with that question of the value of this non-specific vagueness, right? Like something that's open to interpretation, something that's like maybe that itself could somehow be grounded in the value of relatability and truth. Um,
I mean, yeah. I mean, that
um,
seems pretty easy, right? Like,
maybe.
because
Well, so,
that's just the way the world is it's unclear. That's the way the world is.
that's a kind of simple, good explanation because I think that might make
Because
well.
like people do go to Disneyland and you don't know what the meaning is. Like that's how that stuff happens all the time in our lives.
I feel like
What
there's
doesn't happen all the time, what doesn't happen all the time is a happy ending. That never, so that's why
no,
those things annoying, you know, like that's why
Yeah.
those things are cliche, because that's not actually the way the world is. The way the world is like we don't know the ending to our story or anything. Like it's nothing's ever closed. Like that's the way
Okay.
the world is.
I wonder. Hopefully, we don't open too much of a Pandora's box. Maybe we can explore this a little bit. And if you have to go at any point, then just text me or something, and then that's fine. Um, but so, have you seen Inception?
Yes, I have.
So at the very end of the movie, um, the top is spinning. Okay,
Yeah,
and
right.
frame cuts. Right. That is beautiful and good and awesome. Um, but I don't know if you want to explain that in terms of authentic. I actually forgot kind of the plot of Inception. There was
Yeah.
emotional significance behind that. Um, do you remember
Yeah.
what it was? Do
No,
you
okay.
remember? I don't remember.
Well, you're saying like how can you say that that's the way the world is? Like
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, that doesn't seem that hard. Like basically at the end, like what's happening is Christopher Nolan is telling us a story. Now you can say it's he
yeah,
wrote a script and did all this complex stuff, but honestly, it's like Christopher Nolan just came into my house and was like, okay, let me tell you a story about this guy. And so what happened is he finishes the story without giving us closure. He just said, but yeah, at the um he said he just says like he's finishing the story and he's like, yeah, so finally the main character, you know, Leonardo DiCaprio goes back to his family. However, the top was still spinning, and he
yeah,
just leaves it at that. And so you know, and let's say like he was almost telling like he knew this guy who told him the story. You know, he's like, there's this crazy old guy that I met, and he actually told me about like this whole thing that happened. I had trouble believing him, but he said like there was this top spinning at the end. Like that's
yeah,
just believe it. I'd be like, huh, yeah, interesting. Well, that's too bad I don't have closure. Like
yeah.
it just seems
No,
like yeah, that's something that could happen.
yeah. I think I need some clarity on the plot again to really fully analyze that. But
Well,
I don't.
basically, okay, yeah, yeah.
No. Well, you go.
Yeah, I mean, it was that I forget the guy's name, but Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah,
He keeps he goes into the dream world, right? And
yeah,
but really he wants to go be with his family, but he's trapped in all this dream world stuff that's going on.
yeah. Okay.
And finally at the end of the movie he finds his family, except for in the dream world the top keeps spinning. So he
Okay.
goes to see his family. He goes to see his family, and you see him hugging his family and everything.
Yeah.
But then the camera goes out, and you see the top still spinning, which makes you think, wait, is he in the dream world or is he not?
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Okay. Again, I wonder how we could explain that in terms of relatability. That just seems like something very different.
Okay. Wait. Actually, I just had maybe a nice little easy solution to
Okay.
the Inception thing, which is that I personally don't like Inception, and I think it's a bad movie, and I think that was a bad
You
ending.
are crazy. You are
Dude,
insane.
that's a nice simple solution. It's
Okay.
tight.
It's what?
It's a nice easy solution. It's just bad, so we don't need to explain it because it's not.
He said it's
It's
just a
just
bad
it's
movie.
cringe. It's cringe.
No, okay, but like the ending is cool though.
I don't. So to me,
You're crazy. You're crazy.
I can defend reasonably that it's actually a bad ending
You are crazy.
because they leave it open for no reason. And there's no reason. Like
Okay.
why leave it open? Okay, and actually, just the detail. Christopher Nolan did say the top shakes at the end, so
Yeah,
he
yeah, it
actually
does.
be closed. So
Well,
maybe that's relevant.
I
He did
think
say that.
you're crazy. You're actually
No,
crazy.
he said that. He
I thought
literally said.
I thought that was controversial. I thought that was just like an audiences were like, is it tipping or not? I thought that was what it was. But
Oh, may I don't know.
oh man. Okay. Well, I don't know if we're
Okay,
gonna.
well,
I don't know if we're gonna get
well,
to the
okay.
bottom.
How about this? We pick up on this question the next time
Okay. No.
because
So
I don't know if we're gonna be able to solve it.
what? Man, we did get to the bottom of a lot of stuff though. No, but
We
okay.
really
So
did, honestly.
if you could give some kind of summary for this conversation and something to say to the audience, what would you say?
I mean, it's kind of just what I just said about like I've really been trying to figure out what like honesty and subtlety and all these aesthetic qualities have in common because it seemed
Yeah.
unintuitive, and now I think I understand it better, which is that they all have truth in common. These aesthetic qualities have an epistemological quality in common, and that's a part of their
And
nature.
I suppose one final thought for me, like
Yeah.
presumably historically there's been three different categories: truth, beauty, and goodness. But I wonder if they can all be explained in terms of each other, because we've just
Yeah.
partially explained beauty in terms of truth. I wonder if truth can
Yeah.
be explained in terms of goodness or something.
Well, yeah,
Um,
I mean that's another thing that's intertwined is like what I was like when an author, a person writes like an autobiography that's subtle and honest and relatable
yeah,
and realistic, that I like them
yeah,
because they're being good in doing that
yeah,
because we have this sort of obligation to tell the truth to each other. So they're
yeah.
also being good, which and when a good person writes a good book, there's goodness wrapped up in the truth, wrapped up in
No,
the
it's
beauty.
true. True. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I need to use the bathroom really badly. But no, it's been a great conversation, and we'll
Yeah,
have to have you back on for a part two. We'll have to think about this Inception.
we gotta pick up. Yeah.
We got to convince you that it's a great movie,
Okay.
and then we have to review it. But no, yeah, okay. It's been real. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'll see you later.
All right. So
All right, bye.